Trust is the foundation upon which every relationship stands, whether between individuals, communities, or nations. Without trust, no alliance, no agreement, no partnership can survive for long. It is invisible, yet it holds more power than armies, wealth, or titles. Trust is the glue that binds people together, and when it is present, it creates security, confidence, and stability. But what most people fail to realize is how fragile trust truly is. It takes years to build, yet only a single action to destroy. History has shown over and over that trust can be broken not by a crowd, not by an army, but by the selfish act of one person. This truth applies to friendships, families, governments, and even the powerful alliances between nations. When two nations come together, their strength lies not only in treaties and agreements, but in the belief that each side honors its word. The United States and India, for example, represent two democracies with vast potential drawn together by common interests in trade, technology, defense, and culture. For decades, this relationship has been celebrated as a partnership of equals, promising prosperity for millions of people. But all it takes is one individual, perhaps a leader, a diplomat, or even a person in a place of influence to betray that bond. A secret deal, a dishonest statement, or a corrupt action can turn decades of trust into ashes. One person acting in selfishness or short-sighted ambition can undo years of progress and leave nations questioning whether loyalty still exists. Trust once broken does not just disappear silently. It leaves a wound that bleeds into every part of the relationship. Suspicion replaces openness. Every gesture is analyzed with doubt. Promises no longer hold weight. Where there was once cooperation, there grows hesitation. Where there was once bold vision, there emerges fear of betrayal. And the tragedy is that millions of innocent people suffer for the misdeed of one. Entire nations pay the price for the selfishness of a single actor. Businesses lose opportunities, students lose exchanges, militaries lose coordination, and societies lose hope. This is the chain reaction unleashed when one person chooses betrayal over honor. Selfishness is always short-sighted. A person who breaks trust rarely considers the ripple effect of their actions. They may think they are gaining power, wealth, or influence in the moment, but what they truly create is a legacy of destruction. Trust is not a possession to be traded or stolen, it is a responsibility to be guarded. When someone sacrifices trust for personal gain, they reveal not just their weakness of character but their blindness to the future. For trust, once shattered, rarely returns in its original strength. The scar always remains, reminding everyone of the moment it was broken. In personal relationships, a betrayal may destroy a marriage, end a friendship, or split a family. In global affairs, betrayal can shift the balance of power, alter economic destinies, or even ignite conflict. Imagine two nations standing together like pillars holding up a bridge. The strength of the bridge depends on both sides standing firm. If one person at the base of one pillar decides to weaken it through corruption, lies, or reckless decisions, the entire bridge trembles. This is how fragile alliances are, and how dangerous it is to underestimate the power of one selfish act. The lesson here is not merely that betrayal is possible, but that vigilance is necessary. Leaders must guard alliances carefully, not just against external enemies, but against internal weaknesses. They must understand that the betrayal of one individual can ripple outward, staining the honor of an entire nation. This is why accountability, integrity, and transparency matter so much in leadership. A strong nation is not only measured by its weapons or economy, but by the trustworthiness of its people and leaders. Trust is a shield. Without it, the mightiest nation can become vulnerable. Yet, even in the ashes of broken trust, there is a chance for renewal. When betrayal is exposed, when the truth is laid bare, there is an opportunity to rebuild stronger than before. But it requires honesty, courage, and time. It requires leaders and citizens who refuse to let the selfishness of one person define the destiny of millions. They must rise and declare that trust will not be destroyed forever, that honor will be restored, that integrity will once again be the cornerstone of their alliances. This renewal is never easy, because rebuilding trust is like rebuilding a shattered glass. It takes patience, skill, and commitment. But it is possible if there is determination to move beyond betrayal and stand again on the foundation of truth. Still, the warning remains clear. Never underestimate the power of one person's choice. Just as one spark can ignite a wildfire that consumes forests, one act of betrayal can destroy partnerships built over generations. This is why nations, leaders, and individuals alike must take responsibility for their actions. Every choice matters, every decision carries weight. The loyalty or disloyalty of one person can either strengthen the future or set it on fire. Trust is a gift, but it is also a test. How we treat it determines the destiny of relationships, communities, and nations. The course of history has never been shaped solely by vast armies, towering governments, or mighty empires. Often, it has been shaped by the actions of individuals. One decision, one word, one lie, or one act of corruption has the power to ripple through time, leaving consequences far beyond what the person themselves may have imagined. When we think of the relationship between two global powers, it is easy to believe that such ties are unshakable, bound tightly by treaties, strategies, and shared goals. But the truth is far more fragile. These relationships rest on human decisions, human integrity, and human actions. A single betrayal, a single compromise of values, can send shockwaves through the trust built over decades. Nations like the United States and India, both powerful in their own right, have spent years weaving together economic, military, and cultural ties. These alliances are not built overnight. They require patience, negotiation, and mutual respect. But what is overlooked is that the agreements and commitments made between nations are carried out by individuals. Diplomats, ministers, corporate leaders, and influencers act as the messengers of nations. If even one of these individuals chooses dishonesty or corruption, the carefully constructed bridge between two countries begins to crack. It does not take an army to destroy trust. It does not take a government collapse. It takes one decision, one moment of selfish ambition, to sow seeds of doubt that grow into division. A lie spoken at the wrong time can alter the direction of an entire partnership. Imagine a leader who misrepresents information, a negotiator who conceals crucial truths, or a policymaker who bends the rules for personal gain. These actions might appear small or insignificant at the time, but when uncovered, they have the ability to poison trust. Once nations begin to question the sincerity of each other's words, every promise becomes suspect, every handshake becomes hollow. What was once cooperation begins to look like manipulation, and the path forward becomes clouded by suspicion. That is the destructive power of a single dishonest act. Corruption, in particular, carries devastating weight. An official who accepts a bribe, a businessman who manipulates trade agreements, or a leader who places personal enrichment above national interest can undermine years of diplomatic progress. Corruption does not just weaken one person's integrity, it weakens the credibility of an entire nation in the eyes of its allies. When corruption is exposed, the message received is that loyalty can be bought, that promises are negotiable, and that values are disposable. For a global partnership, this is poison. It erodes the confidence needed to collaborate, leaving even the most powerful alliances vulnerable to collapse. The ripple effect of individual actions is enormous. A single misstep can impact millions of lives. Students waiting for exchange programs, businesses depending on trade stability, and citizens benefiting from defense cooperation may all suffer because of one person's failure to uphold integrity. People often underestimate how connected the world is, how interwoven the destinies of nations have become. In a globalized era, the decision of one individual can cross oceans, disrupt markets, and unsettle entire populations. This is why the weight of responsibility carried by those in positions of influence is so heavy. They are not just making choices for themselves, they are shaping the future of nations. Yet this truth also carries a powerful reminder: if one individual can destroy, one individual can also build. Just as lies can break trust, honesty can strengthen it. Just as corruption can poison an alliance, integrity can solidify it. Decisions of courage and loyalty have the ability to inspire confidence between nations. A leader who stands firm for truth, a diplomat who chooses transparency over deception, or a citizen who upholds justice can turn the tide of history in a positive direction. The same power that can tear down relationships can also be harnessed to create unity, respect, and progress. What must be remembered is that no nation should underestimate the influence of a single voice or decision. It is easy to think that only massive policies or wars determine the fate of international partnerships. But the truth is more subtle. The integrity of individuals within the system is the thread that holds the fabric together. When one thread is cut, the whole fabric weakens. This is why accountability matters at every level, from the smallest official to the highest leader. Without accountability, corruption festers, dishonesty thrives, and trust crumbles. With accountability, integrity rises, truth prevails, and partnerships endure in the end. The story of international relations is not just the story of governments and treaties. It is the story of people. People who make decisions in rooms unseen by the public. People who either choose to honor their commitments or betray them. People who decide between truth and lies, between self-interest and the greater good. And it is these decisions, these individual actions, that determine whether nations grow closer in unity or drift apart in suspicion. One decision can build a bridge, and one decision can burn it to the ground. That is the power of individual actions, and it is a lesson the world must never forget. Friendship between nations is one of the most powerful yet fragile bonds in the world. It is built on a foundation of shared interests, respect, and mutual benefit. But beneath the surface lies the constant reality that trust must be maintained through integrity and consistency. The relationship between the United States and India stands as an example of this truth. Both countries, each strong in their own right, have worked for decades to strengthen ties across trade, defense, technology, and cultural exchange. From strategic partnerships in global security to economic collaboration in innovation and commerce, this friendship has grown to be one of the most important alliances in the modern world. Yet despite its strength and promise, it remains vulnerable, because at the heart of every alliance is human trust, and trust requires integrity to endure. History reminds us that friendships between nations are not guaranteed. They are not permanent contracts written in stone, but living relationships that must be nurtured, guarded, and renewed with each passing generation. The United States and India have shared moments of closeness and periods of distance, moments of deep cooperation and moments of doubt. What has allowed the relationship to endure is the recognition of shared values, democracy, ambition, and the pursuit of opportunity. But even as these values create common ground, they are tested by the realities of politics, competing interests, and individual actions that can strengthen or weaken the partnership. Every alliance is only as strong as the integrity of those who maintain it, and when integrity falters, the friendship trembles. Trade is one of the strongest bridges between nations, and in the case of the United States and India, it has been a force of growth and opportunity. Billions of dollars flow between the two economies each year, creating jobs, fueling industries, and connecting entrepreneurs across continents. Yet trade relationships are highly sensitive. They depend on trust that agreements will be honored, that rules will be followed, and that fairness will be respected. One violation, one act of dishonesty can cause suspicion and retaliatory measures. Tariffs rise, negotiations stall, and what was once a thriving bridge begins to show cracks. This is why trade, though powerful, is also fragile, and why integrity is the only way to keep it stable. Defense cooperation adds another dimension to this partnership. The United States and India have worked side by side in strengthening security, countering global threats, and ensuring stability in regions that affect millions of lives. Shared military exercises, strategic defense agreements, and intelligence partnerships highlight the trust between the two nations. But defense ties are even more fragile than trade, because they involve national security. The sharing of technology, weapons, or intelligence requires the highest level of integrity. A single leak of information, a single act of betrayal can undo years of cooperation and place lives at risk. Integrity in defense partnerships is not just a diplomatic necessity, it is a matter of survival. Cultural exchange has also been a powerful bond between the United States and India. Millions of Indians live and thrive in America, contributing to science, medicine, technology, and the arts. Similarly, American culture has found a place in India, influencing business, entertainment, and education. These exchanges are the heartbeat of friendship, showing that the bond is not only between governments, but between people. Yet even cultural ties are fragile. Prejudice, misunderstanding, or political manipulation can weaken the perception of trust between citizens of two nations. It is in these moments that the integrity of leadership becomes essential, because leaders set the tone for how people view each other. Words spoken carelessly, policies shaped by short-term agendas, or actions fueled by selfish motives can harm the goodwill that took decades to build. The fragility of friendship between nations is not a weakness to be feared, but a reminder, leaders and citizens alike. A fragile object, when cared for, can last for centuries. Similarly, alliances that are treated with respect, honesty, and commitment can endure even the greatest challenges. The fragility of trust should inspire vigilance, not despair. It should remind nations that every decision matters, every word spoken by leaders has weight, and every agreement signed must be honored not just in letter but in spirit. The United States and India have the potential to shape the future of global politics, but only if they protect the integrity of their relationship. Integrity is the anchor of friendship. Without it, alliances drift aimlessly, vulnerable to the winds of conflict and competition. With it, alliances grow strong enough to withstand storms. The United States and India must recognize that, while their partnership is vast and powerful, it is also delicate. It takes only one betrayal, one violation of trust to weaken what has taken years to build. But when integrity is placed at the center, the friendship not only survives but thrives, becoming an example for the world of what nations can achieve together. The lesson is clear: friendship between nations is not invincible. It is fragile, but it is worth protecting. The ties between the United States and India are among the most promising in the modern world, but they will only remain strong if both sides commit to honesty, loyalty, and the courage to act with integrity. Without these, the bond will weaken, but with them, it will continue to grow into a force that shapes the destiny of millions. Truth has a way of forcing its way to the surface, no matter how deeply it is buried. Lies may feel powerful in the moment. Cover-ups may appear convincing. Deceit may win temporary victories and silence questions for a time. But truth is stronger than deception, and history has always proven that what is hidden eventually emerges into the light. No matter how skillfully a lie is crafted, no matter how carefully it is protected, truth is patient, and time is its greatest ally. The reality is that deceit is fragile while truth is eternal. The world has seen countless examples of individuals, organizations, and even nations attempting to shield wrongdoing behind walls of secrecy, only for those walls to crumble and reveal everything they sought to hide. The reason truth cannot stay hidden forever is because lies are unstable by nature. To cover one falsehood, another must be created, and soon a chain of deception is built. This chain becomes too heavy to sustain. Eventually, contradictions arise, evidence appears, or witnesses step forward. The very structure built to protect a lie becomes the same structure that exposes it. Deceit demands constant maintenance, but truth requires no effort. It exists whether people acknowledge it or not. And once the cracks in a lie begin to show, it is only a matter of time before the entire illusion collapses. When that happens, the damage is often greater than the original offense, because betrayal and dishonesty add layers of broken trust that are difficult to repair in personal life. This reality plays out in friendships, families, and communities. Someone may hide mistakes, conceal betrayal, or live a double life, thinking they have fooled everyone. For a while they may succeed, but eventually truth emerges. It may come through a slip of the tongue, an accidental discovery, or an unexpected confession, but it always arrives. The pain caused by the lie often exceeds the pain of the truth itself, because deceit not only hides reality but erodes trust. Once exposed, people often ask not just, "What happened?" but "Why was I lied to?" That second question is harder to heal, because trust, once broken, is not easily restored. On a larger scale, the same principle applies to governments, corporations, and international relationships. Leaders may hide corruption, companies may cover up failures, and nations may conceal secrets. At first, their strategies may succeed, creating a false image of strength, success, or integrity. But scandals throughout history prove that truth finds a way out. Whistleblowers emerge, documents leak, investigations unfold, and what was hidden in the shadows is dragged into the light. The exposure is often devastating, not just because of the original wrongdoing, but because of the betrayal of trust. People forgive mistakes more easily than they forgive dishonesty, Because honesty carries dignity while lies carry insult, the exposure of truth also serves an important purpose. It resets the foundation. Lies may allow progress for a short time, but it is progress built on sand. When truth finally comes out, it sweeps away false structures and forces people to rebuild on solid ground. Though painful, this process leads to stronger relationships, better institutions, and healthier societies. Truth has the power to cleanse, to purify, to restore. It brings accountability, and accountability leads to growth. This is why, though deceit can harm and mislead, truth in the end always prevails, shaping the future with clarity. There is also a moral law at work. Human beings are wired for truth. Deep within, even those who lie know they are covering reality. Conscience whispers, guilt weighs heavy, and restlessness grows. No matter how much one tries to suppress the voice of truth, it continues to echo within. And when truth finally emerges, it not only exposes deception but also liberates those who were bound by it. Lies create chains, but truth breaks them. This is why history remembers the fall of corrupt leaders, the collapse of dishonest systems, and the unmasking of deceivers. Time itself works in favor of truth, because it reveals what deception tries to conceal. For nations, this principle carries tremendous weight. Diplomatic ties, economic relationships, and global reputations depend on honesty. If a country engages in lies or cover-ups, it may maintain an image temporarily, but sooner or later the truth will rise. The damage then extends beyond the leaders responsible, affecting citizens, businesses, and future generations. Trust once lost at the global stage is difficult to regain. This is why integrity is not just a personal virtue but a national necessity. When nations commit to truth, they build credibility. When they embrace deception, they invite eventual disgrace. In every sphere of life, whether personal or global, truth's emergence is not just inevitable but necessary. Without it, trust cannot be rebuilt, justice cannot be served, and progress cannot endure. Lies may give the illusion of control, but it is only an illusion. Cover-ups may delay consequences, but they cannot erase them. Deceit may silence questions for a time, but silence is temporary, and truth speaks louder than any lie. The power of truth lies not only in its permanence, but in its ability to shape the future in ways lies never can. Truth clears the fog, illuminates the path, and restores confidence where deception has left only doubt. This is why no matter how convincing a lie appears, no matter how secure a cover-up seems, no matter how deeply deceit is buried, the truth will always come to light. It is only a question of when, not if. And when it does, the world will see clearly what was hidden, and justice will follow. Weakness, when concealed, has the power to corrode trust silently from within. It eats away at the foundation of a relationship, whether between people or between nations. Hidden betrayal or dishonesty may seem like a protection in the short term, but in reality it creates a false sense of security that is bound to collapse. The moment of exposure, though painful, is also the moment of clarity. When betrayal is revealed, what once stood as an unspoken weakness transforms into an opportunity for rebuilding on stronger ground. This principle is not only true in personal life, but also in the complex web of international relations where trust between nations is essential for cooperation and peace. The contents of nations can take many forms. Broken agreements, hidden corruption, false promises, or secret alliances that contradict public commitments. At first, such actions may give the illusion of strength. Leaders may think they have gained an advantage, shielded themselves from accountability, or outsmarted their allies. But eventually, the truth surfaces. Exposure may come through documents, investigations, or actions too obvious to ignore. What seemed like strength quickly unravels, and the hidden weakness is laid bare for all to see. In that moment, the partnership appears broken and trust seems destroyed. Yet it is precisely in this exposure that the possibility for genuine strength emerges. The reason exposed weakness leads to strength is because honesty creates a deception never can. When betrayal is revealed, there is no more pretending. The masks fall off, the illusions fade, and the relationship is forced into reality. This reality may be uncomfortable, but it is also liberating. Nations no longer have to navigate a partnership clouded by lies. Instead, they face the truth of what went wrong and can begin the process of rebuilding on terms that are real and transparent. Just as a cracked wall must be torn down before a stronger one can be built, so too must weakness be exposed before true strength can take its place. For alliances like the one between the United States and India, exposure of betrayal can initially feel like a devastating blow. Both countries rely on trust in matters of trade defense and global strategy. A revelation of dishonesty or corruption can shake confidence on both sides. Businesses may hesitate, governments may question motives, and citizens may feel disillusioned. Yet, if handled with integrity, this exposure becomes a turning point rather than an end. It forces both nations to confront the reality of their partnership, to acknowledge mistakes openly, and to rebuild trust on a firmer foundation. The rebuilding process is difficult, but it creates bonds that are stronger than those built on denial or pretense. The dynamic of exposure also reshapes accountability. When betrayal is uncovered, those responsible are forced to answer for their actions. Accountability restores faith in justice and sends a message that deceit will not be tolerated. This is not just symbolic, it is practical. Accountability ensures that similar betrayals are less likely to happen in the future, because the cost of dishonesty becomes clear. In this way, exposure strengthens the integrity of the relationship. Without exposure, betrayal festers and repeats. With exposure, it is confronted, corrected, and transformed into an opportunity for growth. Another dimension of exposed weakness is that it fosters humility. Nations, like individuals, can fall into pride, believing they are invulnerable or immune to mistakes. When betrayal is revealed, pride is broken and humility takes its place. Humility allows nations to admit failure, learn lessons, and pursue cooperation with greater sincerity. Pride resists correction, but humility welcomes it. A humble partnership is one that values integrity, one that listens, one that adapts, and one that endures. In this way, the exposure of weakness can be a gift disguised as a crisis, bringing about a humility that ultimately strengthens the bond. The exposure of betrayal also clears space for honesty to flourish. Lies and cover-ups create an atmosphere of suspicion where every action is questioned. But once the truth is revealed and addressed, honesty can become the new standard. Nations that once hid behind falsehoods can now commit to transparency in negotiations, trade, and defense agreements. This commitment to openness builds stronger confidence not only between governments but also among citizens, businesses, and global partners. When people see that betrayal has been faced and corrected, they begin to believe again in the possibility of trust. There is also a symbolic power in turning betrayal into strength. It demonstrates resilience. It shows the world that while deception may have caused damage, it did not destroy the partnership. Instead, the exposure of weakness became the foundation of renewal. This resilience inspires confidence among allies and even respect among rivals. It sends a clear message that while betrayal can wound, it cannot permanently break the spirit of cooperation when both sides choose to rebuild with integrity. Ultimately, the process of moving from exposure to strength is not easy. It requires courage from leaders to admit wrongs, wisdom to make changes, and patience to allow trust to grow again. But the reward is worth the struggle. Nations that confront betrayal directly and rebuild on honesty emerge with alliances that are stronger, more authentic, and more enduring. The weakness that once threatened their bond becomes the very thing that, once overcome, gives their partnership its resilience and depth. What was once a point of shame becomes a source of strength, proving that betrayal is not the final word but only the beginning of a new chapter defined by truth and integrity. No nation can ever be reduced to the actions of a single individual. Nations are living entities built on the sweat, sacrifice, and vision of millions across generations. They represent cultures, values, histories, and futures that stretch far beyond the choices of one person. Yet, it is often the case that the world magnifies the failures of a single figure and attempts to paint an entire country with the same brush. This is not only unfair but also deeply misleading. The truth is that the dignity, strength, and destiny of a nation are carried by its people as a collective, not by the flaws or betrayals of one individual. When one Indian acts in selfishness or dishonesty, it may create scandal or damage trust, but it does not define the greatness or the future of India. India as a nation has stood as one of the oldest civilizations and one of the most dynamic modern democracies. Its identity cannot be tied to the mistakes of one citizen, no matter how influential or powerful that person might be. To reduce India's worth to the betrayal or corruption of an individual is to ignore the vast contributions of its people, the resilience of its democracy, and the vision of its future. A nation of over 1 billion people cannot be judged by a single act. Just as a tree is not condemned because of one withered branch, a nation cannot be diminished because of one person's weakness. The actions of one may cause temporary damage, but the spirit of the people remains unshaken. And it is this spirit that determines the true character of a country. Throughout history, great nations have endured scandals, betrayals, and leaders who failed in integrity. Yet these nations were not defined by those moments. Instead, they were defined by how they rose afterward, how their people refused to allow one mistake to dictate their story. The United States has had its share of corrupt officials, yet America continues to be recognized for its innovation and influence. Other nations have endured leaders who abused power, yet their histories are remembered for resilience and renewal, not for the betrayal of one. India is no different. The mistake of one Indian does not erase the sacrifices of freedom fighters, the brilliance of scientists, the vision of reformers, or the resilience of ordinary citizens who carry the nation forward every day. The danger of judging an entire nation by one person's actions lies in its distortion of truth. It allows enemies to weaponize mistakes and allies to lose perspective. It paints millions of innocent people with the stain of someone else's guilt. Such judgments not only hurt diplomacy, but also diminish the progress that nations achieve through collective effort. The greatness of India is not found in the flaws of individuals, but in the enduring achievements of its people. The democracy that thrives despite its challenges, the innovation that reshapes global industries, the culture that inspires the world, and the values that continue to shape its identity. No single person can undo that legacy. When betrayal or corruption is revealed, it is natural for the world to react strongly. Trust may be shaken, and partnerships may feel threatened, but it is in these moments that perspective is vital. The failure of one Indian does not equate to the failure of India. Instead, it is a reminder that nations, like individuals, are imperfect but capable of growth. The betrayal of one becomes the lesson of many. It forces accountability, strengthens institutions, and prepares a country to stand even taller. India's history itself shows that trials often become turning points, moments when the nation learns, adapts, and grows stronger. The dignity of India cannot be stolen by one mistake, because dignity lies in resilience, in the ability to rise and move forward. The truth is that every nation is bigger than its scandals. The character of a country is written in the millions of daily acts of honesty, hard work, and sacrifice of its citizens. For India, this means the farmer who rises before dawn to feed the nation, the teacher who shapes the minds of the next generation, the soldier who defends the borders with courage, and the entrepreneur who builds businesses that impact the world. These individuals define the future of India, not the betrayals of one person. When seen from this perspective, it becomes clear that judging a nation by the weakness of one is both unjust and blind to the reality of collective strength. In the global arena, alliances must be careful not to collapse because of the mistake of a single individual. When trust is shaken, leaders must separate the act of one from the character of many. To allow one person's betrayal to define an entire country is to allow injustice to triumph. True partnership requires the maturity to see beyond scandal and to recognize the larger picture. For the United States and India, this means remembering that their relationship is built on decades of shared goals and values, not on the actions of one figure who chose dishonesty over integrity. The future of such a partnership depends on the recognition that nations cannot be reduced to individuals. No matter how loud the noise of scandal may be, it is temporary. The integrity of a nation's people endures. India's story is not one of betrayal, but of resilience, not of weakness, but of rising strength. Its future will be shaped not by the failures of one, but by the collective determination of millions. One Indian may falter, but India itself stands firm. And it is this truth that must guide the world in how it views nations beyond the shadow of individual mistakes. Leadership is not merely about holding power or commanding authority. It is about bearing responsibility for the well-being of people and the future of nations. True leadership is tested not in moments of comfort, but in moments when integrity is challenged and alliances stand at risk. Relationships between nations are among the most delicate and important responsibilities a leader carries. These alliances, built over decades of diplomacy, trust, and shared vision, are not indestructible. They can be eroded by selfish ambition, corroded by corruption, or destroyed by greed if leaders do not guard them carefully. To protect alliances is to protect the stability of nations, the prosperity of economies, and the peace of entire generations. True leadership demands vigilance, sacrifice, and the strength to put principles above personal gain. When two nations form an alliance, it is never simply about leaders shaking hands or signing agreements. Alliances are living commitments. They depend on the daily actions of governments, the honesty of negotiations, and the shared belief that both sides will honor their word. Leaders are the guardians of this trust. Their responsibility is not only to create alliances, but to sustain them, shield them, and strengthen them against forces that seek to divide. The greatest threat is often not from external enemies, but from internal decay. Corruption that tempts individuals to place wealth above loyalty, or greed that pushes sacrifice a long-term friendship for short-term gain. A leader who does not confront these dangers leaves alliances vulnerable to collapse. The history of nations offers countless examples of alliances ruined not by military defeat, but by betrayal and dishonesty. Corruption within governments has led to broken promises, failed treaties, and fractured relationships. Greed has caused leaders to exploit alliances for personal enrichment rather than mutual progress. When this happens, allies lose faith, and once trust is broken, it is difficult to rebuild. This is why protecting alliances requires leaders to rise above the temptations that surround power. They must understand that the value of an alliance lies not in what they can extract from it, but in what they can build with it. Leadership rooted in selfishness weakens alliances, but leadership rooted in integrity strengthens them. The partnership between nations like the United States and India illustrates both the promise and fragility of alliances. These two countries share democratic values, economic ties, and strategic goals, yet the strength of their relationship depends heavily on the leadership of those entrusted with it. If corruption enters the picture, if greed overtakes vision, then even this powerful alliance could suffer. Leaders must act as shields, ensuring that betrayals by individuals do not define the destiny of nations. They must establish systems of accountability, insist on transparency, and cultivate a culture of honesty at every level of government. By doing so, they protect not only the alliance itself, but also the trust of millions of citizens who depend on it for security and prosperity. Leadership also requires courage, and those decisions safeguard an alliance. There will always be pressure to prioritize immediate political gain, to appease domestic critics, or to exploit an ally's vulnerability for advantage. But true leaders think beyond the moment. They see the bigger picture. They recognize that alliances are investments in the future, not tools for temporary victories. Defending an alliance may require sacrifice in the present, but it secures stability and opportunity for generations to come. This long-term vision separates true leadership from shallow ambition. The leader who protects alliances does so not for personal glory, but for the enduring benefit of their people. The protection of alliances is not passive, it is active. Leaders must constantly nurture trust through honest dialogue, fair negotiation, and consistent action. They must resist the temptation to hide behind deception or to manipulate agreements for selfish purposes. Instead, they must cultivate relationships with sincerity, ensuring that allies know their word can be trusted. Integrity in leadership creates confidence, and confidence is the lifeblood of alliances. Without it, every promise is questioned, every commitment doubted, and every plan viewed with suspicion. With it, alliances become resilient, capable of withstanding conflict, misunderstanding, and even betrayal. Because the foundation of trust is strong, corruption and greed are relentless enemies of alliances, always seeking a way to creep in. Leaders must remain vigilant, not only in their own actions, but in the actions of those they appoint and trust. One official's dishonesty, one act of corruption, can ripple outward and damage the reputation of an entire nation. This is why leaders must ensure that accountability exists at every level of governance. When corruption is punished, when greed is rejected, when integrity is rewarded, alliances grow stronger because allies see that partnership is built on solid ground. True leadership means creating an environment where honesty thrives and betrayal is impossible to hide. The measure of leadership is often seen in times of crisis, and protecting alliances during such moments is one of the greatest tests. When betrayal occurs, when trust is broken, leaders must act swiftly to confront the truth, take responsibility, and begin the process of rebuilding. It is not weakness to admit failure. It is strength to face it openly. By dealing with betrayal honestly, leaders restore faith in the alliance and prove that corruption and greed will not be allowed to triumph. This honesty ensures that the alliance, though shaken, emerges stronger and more resilient in the end. True leadership is defined not by titles, wealth, or power, but by the ability to protect what is entrusted to you. Alliances between nations are treasures of history, opportunities for progress, and safeguards for peace. They must be defended with integrity, honesty, and courage. Leaders who protect alliances understand that they are not only shaping policies, but shaping the future of millions. By standing guard against corruption and greed, by placing principles above personal gain, they ensure that relationships between nations do not crumble but endure. Stronger with each test they face, the real test of any alliance is not in how it withstands the pressure of external enemies, but in how it endures the betrayal that comes from within. History has shown time and again that great nations and powerful partnerships can stand against invading armies, economic sanctions, and even global opposition. Yet they crumble when the threat comes from betrayal inside their own circle. The real lesson is that destruction rarely begins at the gates. It begins in the heart of those entrusted with loyalty, in the choices of leaders, representatives, or allies who choose selfishness over faithfulness. What weakens alliances is not always the force of external enemies, but the slow corrosion of trust by those who should have been the guardians of unity. Alliances are like fortresses. They can be built with thick walls, strategic defenses, and powerful armies standing guard, but no fortress survives if the betrayal comes from the watchman who opens the gate at midnight. That single act of unfaithfulness does more damage than an enemy's years of planning. Nations may prepare themselves against outside threats, but they are often unprepared for the treachery of their own. This is why the real lesson for every alliance is that loyalty from within is the strongest weapon, and disloyalty from within is the deadliest weakness. When countries like the United States and India come together, they do not merely sign agreements, they weave a fabric of shared trust. That fabric is held together by threads of honesty, loyalty, and responsibility. But it takes only one thread, when pulled in betrayal, to begin unraveling the entire design. The words and actions of one leader, one representative, or one official can stain the reputation of millions. That is the danger of internal betrayal. It magnifies the failure of one individual into a shadow that falls over the whole alliance. This is why alliances demand not only shared interests but shared integrity, because without integrity, every handshake and every promise becomes fragile. The danger of betrayal within is that it always comes disguised. Unlike enemies who declare their hostility openly, betrayal wears the mask of loyalty until the moment of destruction. Those who betray are often those closest to the center of power, those trusted with responsibility. When they choose greed over honesty or manipulation over sincerity, they do not just harm their own reputation, they damage the credibility of the alliance they represent. The tragedy of betrayal is not only in the act itself, but in the shock it creates, the sense of disbelief that someone within the trusted circle could turn against the very foundation they were supposed to protect. Yet, even in betrayal, there is a lesson to be learned. It is through the revelation of unfaithfulness that nations are reminded of the importance of building alliances on values stronger than convenience. If an alliance exists only for profit or political advantage, it will collapse at the first sign of betrayal. But if it is built on integrity, transparency, and accountability, then even betrayal cannot fully destroy it. Instead, it becomes an opportunity to purge weakness, to identify the cracks, and to rebuild stronger than before. In this sense, betrayal is both a threat and a teacher. It warns of the dangers of neglecting vigilance, but also gives the chance to fortify what was once vulnerable. True leadership in alliances understands this real lesson. It is not enough to guard against outside enemies. Leaders must guard against the erosion of trust inside. They must establish systems that prevent betrayal, demand accountability, and encourage integrity at every level. They must remember that while enemies can be deterred by strength, betrayal can only be prevented by character. Leaders who fail to uphold these values may gain temporary victories, but they will lose the foundation of loyalty that sustains true partnerships. Without loyalty, alliances become hollow structures, impressive in appearance but ready to collapse at the slightest internal shake. The unfaithfulness of those within does not only harm politics, it harms the people who depend on alliances for peace, progress, and stability. When a trusted representative betrays an alliance, the consequences ripple out to ordinary citizens, to economies, to defense agreements, and to opportunities for the future. The betrayal of one person becomes the burden of millions. This is why the responsibility of faithfulness is so heavy, and why betrayal is so destructive. The strength of any alliance rests not on weapons or wealth, but on the invisible bond of trust. And when that bond is broken, the damage is far greater than any attack from outside. But the real lesson also carries hope. If betrayal can weaken alliances, then loyalty can restore them. When nations confront unfaithfulness honestly, refuse to cover it up, and work to rebuild trust, they demonstrate resilience. They show that betrayal does not have the final word. The exposure of unfaithfulness, painful as it may be, provides the opportunity to cleanse, to learn, and to rise again with greater wisdom. Great alliances, like great individuals, are not defined by the betrayals they endure, but by the strength with which they overcome them. It is in the response to betrayal that the true character of an alliance is revealed. In the end, the real lesson is clear. The destruction of alliances does not come from the strength of enemies, but from the weakness of those within. Loyalty is the lifeblood of partnerships, and betrayal is the poison that can destroy them. If nations wish to preserve their alliances, they must value integrity over ambition, truth over deception, and faithfulness over greed. Enemies outside may roar, but it is the silent betrayal inside that must be feared the most. For that is the place where the strongest alliances fall, and where the greatest lessons are learned.